Hello there, my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's video we're going to be trying out the Atezr L2 36-watt laser engraver, and I'm really excited about this for a few different reasons. Number one, if you watch me for any length of time, you'll probably know that my favorite color is purple, surprise surprise, and it just so happens that this machine is actually purple. So as soon as I saw it, I was really excited about that. So first off, it's a very nice looking one, but obviously that is a personal opinion, and ultimately the color doesn't matter, but I just think it's a plus. Secondly, and probably most importantly, are the features that this has. So it has some features that I haven't seen or tried in a laser before, so I was really excited to try those out. One of those being autofocus. So when you're using a laser engraver, you have to focus the laser according to the material you're using, and usually you have to do that manually, but this is the first machine that I've seen and tried where it has an autofocus feature, so I was very excited to try that out and see how well it worked, because that could definitely make the whole process a lot easier. Another feature is resuming of engraving even after power loss. So in other words, if you're in the middle of a project and say the power goes out, this machine can basically remember, and then when it starts back up again, can just continue where it left off. So for instance, you have a big piece of material and you're halfway through the project, the power goes out, and then you would have wasted that whole piece of material and would have to start again on a new one. That's usually the case, but with this, it can actually just continue from where you left off. That way you won't have all that wastage of material. So that is also a bonus in case something like that would happen. Now you can also use this machine offline, so you don't have to have it connected to a computer to use it. You can actually use a card that comes with it, where you then have a project on and then just plug it into the machine, and then this actually has a monitor on the machine, which by the way is detachable and magnetic, so really easy to take on and off, and then you can just control the machine from that monitor. And that is also something I haven't seen on any other machine, so that is also a really cool feature, both for the offline part but equally also just the monitor itself. And then of course we do also have the regular features like child safety lock, safe flame detector, and sloping position protection for safety. So once the machine had arrived, we of course needed to build it, but that process was actually pretty easy as there were nice instructions and everything was labeled nicely in separate bags as well. So that part was definitely doable, and I decided on something a bit different this time. So we did both engraving on some blanks and also some cutting on plywood, but the blanks this time, instead of being stainless steel like I usually would use, I actually wanted to try aluminium. Now the reason you would usually use stainless steel is because diode lasers like this really can only engrave into stainless steel, except for aluminium, but it has to be anodized. So that's basically where you have a layer of usually a color of some sort on top of the aluminium, and then really it's the layer that you're engraving into, and it reveals the aluminium underneath. So that is what we ended up doing, and I bought a package of different colored anodized aluminium dog tags, and my idea was that I wanted to engrave some motivational sayings or quotes, so that is what we did. Now this is what they look like. So I really like all the colors. There were some other colors as well that I didn't try, but these were kind of my favorite ones. Of course I had to use the purple ones, but then there was also some nice blues in there, and we have a pink, and then I did also just want to try how it would come out on a black one. So I basically made up these designs where this one is saying "You're a star" with some stars around it. This is actually a design I used for a previous project, and I just resized it so it fit these blanks nicely. Now on these ones here, what this actually says is "Yesterday's history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That is why it is called present." And that is my personal favorite saying, and I really wanted to have that on one of these blanks like this, so that way I could wear it and basically always have my favorite quote with me, and if I'm then out and about I can just look at it, read it, to kind of just help remind me to be in the moment. And then I just thought the same with that "You're a star," who doesn't need to hear that sometimes, nice and positive. And that's even nice if other people are seeing what you're wearing, they can read that and then maybe that'll give them a positive effect as well. So we did the usual when we engraved these. First of all, we did a material test just to kind of see what settings we need to use with this laser for these blanks, and then once we then found just the right settings, that's when we started engraving the actual finished pieces, and the laser did a really good job of that, especially this one here where it's quite a lot of writing and the text is quite small, and of course it's cursive and all that. It's still nice and detailed and you can easily read what it says, and we also upped the resolution of course to try and get it as detailed as possible, and I'm really happy with how the laser managed to do it. And also just to talk a bit about the autofocus, like I mentioned in the beginning, that came in really handy because like I mentioned, you have to focus the laser according to the material that you're using, which means you have to adjust the height basically, and usually there's a little tool or some screws you have to undo and then redo in order to do that with the laser head. But for this, it has first of all a dial at the top, which if you want to do it manually, it's much easier doing it that way, but also the autofocus actually makes it even easier than that. So that feature did work out nicely, so that will probably have me reaching for this laser a bit more, along with the color of course. But once we were then done engraving all the dog tags and I was happy with how they looked, I of course needed to add some chain to make them wearable. Now for most of them I actually chose to use a ball chain because I kind of thought that went nice with the dog tags. But for the two purple ones I used a purple chain, which is a chain I've had in my stash for a long time because I saw it and I bought it because it's purple. And I do really like the way it looks, but I've never really used it for anything, so I kind of thought why not do that now. So I basically used the purple chain for the purple blanks, and they're ones I'm going to keep in my personal stash and I'll definitely be wearing them. So overall I'm pretty happy with how these all turned out. Now another thing I wanted to do was try and cut with this machine because I always feel like doing both engraving and cutting are really the true test to try laser machines out. So I'd come up with some earring designs that I like the look of and I wanted to cut them out in some plywood. Now the plywood that I'm using here is just 3mm thick because obviously you don't want it too thick for earrings either. But this machine can actually cut up to 30mm wood in just one pass, so that is quite a lot. But anyway, like I mentioned, I made a few designs in Procreate and then just cleaned it up in Photoshop. And of course then sent it to the laser to cut out. Now another thing this machine has is integrated air assist, which is especially useful when you're cutting wood and you most definitely want to use. Now some machines don't come with that, but this machine has it integrated and I always love when that's the case. That way you don't have to worry about it separately, because I do definitely recommend having air assist, especially when you're cutting wood. But anyway, we got it all set up and ready to cut. Now one design I made was a butterfly wing. So obviously with it being earrings, you can just get it to cut it out twice and then you have one for each ear and then you have a set of wings. And the other design I did was a leaf. Now I think it's pretty much like a maple leaf if I'm not mistaken. I wasn't trying to make it any specific type of leaf, I just like the way that these look. And with both designs, especially the leaf one, there's some pretty fine detail in there, so I was really curious to see how the laser would handle that. And honestly, that also went really well. So of course first we did the material test just to find the right settings, and then just set the laser to do its thing. And also use the integrated air assist to help get the neatest result possible. And I did end up getting the laser to cut out both designs in two separate sizes. So first the original size I'd made them in, but then I wanted to try a little bit bigger as well just to see how it would turn out. And I actually really like both sizes. Obviously the smaller ones are a little bit more delicate, but the larger ones could give a little bit more impact. But because of the material they're made of, they're all still really light. So it's not like the larger ones are quite heavy in the ear or anything. So that's also a bonus with making jewelry out of these kinds of materials. And by the way, it's the same thing for the dog tags because it's aluminium. Of course, they're very light as well. Just in case you maybe don't prefer heavy jewelry, these kinds of materials are just perfect for that. But one thing I always find really satisfying is when you're cutting something out in the plywood, especially if it's really detailed like these designs here. Once it's done cutting and you remove the plywood, and the piece basically just comes out by itself and all the little details, they all just fall out. It's really satisfying to see. And obviously you also then know the laser's done a good job. But once the laser then finished cutting the designs out, of course I didn't want to just leave them with the wood effect. That's not my personal taste. I love myself some colour, so of course I had to paint them. Now the first thing I did was spray paint a white base on there, just to have a clean base layer for the paint that I'm going to put on. And once that had dried, it was time to decide on the colours. Now I have some copper and silver paint that I always tend to go for when it comes to painting these jewelry pieces, because I find they have a really good effect and I really like the way they look. Of course I had to also choose a purple colour, but this time I actually also chose a different colour that's quite bright. And this is kind of a turquoise and it's actually iridescent as well, which I thought would fit perfectly with the butterfly wings. So they look like this, and now the iridescence probably doesn't come across quite as nice on camera as it is in real life, but I thought that would just fit perfectly because in real life butterfly wings, they have all this iridescence and different sheen to them, but also I really thought the colour itself was very nice. Really love this kind of colour as well. So I went with that for one of the set of butterfly wings. The other set I did in silver, and these are the smaller ones. So basically it almost imitates that they're actually made of metal, but in reality they're not, and they're nice and light to wear as well. Now for the leaves, like I mentioned, the larger ones here, I used the copper paint, which I also think is really lovely. Again, gives that effect of being made of metal even though it's not, while still being really light and easy to wear. So these are the larger ones and you can see all the detail there, but even in the smaller ones, so it's the exact same design, but you can still see all the detail and how well the laser still cut everything out. And then of course these are the purple ones because I had to get a purple colour in there. And then I just finished them off with some earring findings so you can actually wear them. And I'm really pleased with how these turned out. And it just made me want to come up with even more different earring designs. So I'll most definitely be doing that in the future. But that is basically what we ended up doing with this laser. I've really enjoyed using it, and like I mentioned, I really enjoyed the way it looks. I think the whole machine looks pretty cool overall in the design, but obviously especially the colour. As you can probably tell, it's right up my street as it pretty much matches my phone exactly. But aside from the colour, which obviously doesn't really matter or anything, I really enjoyed all the features of the machine. So the autofocus worked really well. Now fortunately we didn't have a power cut while using it, so I didn't get to try out the resuming feature, but I'm sure if that does happen that'll be quite a handy feature. And come to think of it, 1 or 2 months ago we actually had a power cut out of the blue, even though that's not something we normally ever have, but that did happen, so it just shows that it can happen. And obviously ideally you don't want it to happen while you're doing something like this, but if it does, this laser should be able to handle it. And also it's just a really nice and powerful machine. I definitely got the impression of the power of it just using it, even though we obviously haven't tried it near its maximum capability, but it just leaves the options open for so many more things to do. And I'm definitely going to be experimenting a lot more with this machine because I do really like it. And of course, if you're interested in having a look at it yourself, there will be a link in the description box down below. And I just want to say thank you so much to Atezr for sending me this to try out. I really appreciate it, and also I really enjoyed the machine. And thank you so much to you for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.